You are all set.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, let me turn on my camera. Um, I don't know if you all are able to hear me. This is Kenya Wilson. I'm Stacy's co-presenter.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Let me see. Stacy, I think you will have to drive the slides on your end. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. All right, good afternoon, everyone. We are definitely thrilled to welcome you to our session on empowering minds and embracing diversity, the path to culturally responsive education. We have a packed 15 minutes, and we are going to explore how fostering a culturally responsive approach in education can transform your classrooms into inclusive and empowering spaces. So let's embark on this journey together towards creating an enriching and educational experience that honors diversity and empowers every learner. Thank you for being here. Let's dive in. So my name is Kenya Wilson, and I'm a certified human resources professional, and I currently serve as the department chair for business at Tarrant County College in Fort Worth, Texas. I also teach management and human resources courses, but I also have a background in instructional design, staff and talent development. I've been in higher ed for about 12 years, and I'm currently pursuing a doctoral degree in human resources development at the University of Arkansas.
Hi, my name is Stacy Muse. I am the Learning Technologies Trainer Specialist at East Carolina University, located in Greenville, North Carolina. I am also an adjunct instructor, having taught federal government and Texas government in institutes such as Meredith College, located in Raleigh, North Carolina, and Tarrant County College, located in Fort Worth, Texas. And so today, our learning outcomes for this session is going to be to ensure that we equip you with the tools and knowledge to make your courses more culturally responsive. By embracing these innovations, colleges and universities can create a more inclusive and supportive learning environment, improve student engagement, and better prepare students with a lasting global perspective.
Absolutely. So before we get into what the topics are, I want to go over the benefits of culturally responsive education. Culturally responsive education enriches learning. Diverse environments offers varied perspectives, fostering deeper understanding and empathy amongst our students, enhancing their educational journey. When students engage with diverse viewpoints, they not only broaden their own horizons, but they also develop a richer understanding of the world around them. Also, it increases their global citizenship. Embracing diversity equips students with the skills to thrive in multicultural settings, preparing them to be empathetic and adaptable global citizens. By embracing cultural differences, our students will learn to navigate diverse environments with respect and understanding, laying that foundation for a more interconnected and harmonious world. The benefits also include bias reduction. Culturally responsive education decreases prejudice by promoting awareness and respect for diversity, fostering a more equitable and inclusive society. By challenging stereotypes and biases, all educational professionals can create classrooms and curriculum where students feel valued and accepted. Also, when students from various backgrounds collaborate, they bring their own unique insights and approaches to the table, driving innovation and fostering a cultural of creativity and adaptability. Excuse me. I will pass the discussion to Stacy to cover the main topics for today.
Okay, so the topics that we will cover today will be cultural diversity in education. We will pinpoint the significance in education, impact on learning styles, and empowering students through education. We'll also touch cultural responsive design, in which we will touch on creative, inclusive learning environments, inclusive curriculum development, culturally responsive technology integration, as well as touching on the topic of culturally responsive teaching, where we will briefly touch on approaches to culturally responsive teaching and learning, why representation matters, and adaptive teaching methods for diverse learning styles. And so I'll go ahead and turn this back to Kenya.
Thank you, ma'am. So first we want to look at what cultural responsive education is. This involves acknowledging and embracing the rich tapestry of cultures in our classroom, ensuring that every student feels needed and valued. When we consider what this means in our classrooms, we need to think about the following. How do we define culturally responsive education? Again, this approach recognizes and addresses the diverse cultural backgrounds and learning experiences of our students, tailoring our instructional and teaching methods to resonate with the cultural experience and identities of these students. We want you to walk away today asking yourself the question, what culturally responsive education means to you? Its significance in education includes us embracing culturally diverse education, not only creating more inclusive learning environments, but preparing them to thrive in an increasingly interconnected workforce and world. Right. So as our world becomes more interconnected, we want to make sure that we're preparing them for that environment as well. Understanding how cultural influences shape learning preferences, communication patterns, and perceptions of education inform strategies for fostering an inclusive environment that celebrates diversity through curriculum representation, culturally responsive pedagogy, and community engagement. As we explore these concepts further, let's consider how we can integrate culturally responsive practices into our design and teaching practices. And so I'm going to turn it over to Stacy.
Okay, and so here we're going to talk about culturally responsive design, which emphasizes the intentional creation of inclusive learning environments, curriculum, and supportive services that honor and integrate diverse cultural backgrounds, perspectives, and experiences, fostering equity, belonging, and academic success for all students. So when we talk about creating inclusive learning environments, that involves designing educational settings that embrace and support the diverse needs, backgrounds, and abilities of all learners. This approach prioritizes equity, respect, and accessibility to ensure that every individual feels valued and can fully engage in the learning process. When we speak about inclusive curriculum development involves designing educational content, materials, and activities that reflect and embrace the diversity of learners while ensuring equitable access and opportunities for all. It aims to provide a learning experience that is relevant, engaging, and accessible to students from various backgrounds, abilities, and learning styles. Lastly, culturally responsive technology integration refers to the intentional incorporation of technology tools, resources, and practices that honor and reflect cultural backgrounds, identities, and experiences of diverse learners. It involves leveraging technology in ways that promote equity, access, and inclusion while respecting the cultural nuances and values of students and communities. So now we're going to talk a bit about culturally responsive teaching and learning. This is how we honor students' diverse backgrounds and experiences by integrating their cultural perspectives into the curriculum, fostering inclusivity, and empowering all learners to thrive. So we want to briefly talk about cultural responsive teaching. Some refer to it as CRT. This is best understood as a response to traditional curricular and instructional methods that have been often ineffective for students of color, immigrant children, and students from lower socioeconomic families. CRT calls attention to schooling norms where white middle-class values and expectations are privileged, while other cultural, racial, and economic histories and community backgrounds are overlooked or degenerated. CRT developed out of both the social cauldron of the civil rights movement and multicultural education reform efforts to expand democratic opportunities for all students and their families. Emerging conceptually from the 80s, CRT came of age in the 90s in an effort to meet the multicultural goal to have teachers who hold the knowledge, skills, and professional dispositions that are sensitive and responsive to the condition of people historically placed on the margins of society's political and economic activities. And I'll turn this over to Kenya.
Thank you. I want to talk about the critical aspect of why representation matters in our curriculum, in our classrooms. Representation leads to relationship building. Think about a student who may struggle with math but excels in art. By taking time to understand their interests and strengths at the beginning of a course and in the course design, we can tailor our interactions to build rapport and trust. For instance, this includes incorporating artistic elements into math problems or assignments such as charts, graphs, and other realistic elements to show them that we value their unique talents and perspectives. Also, representation fosters understanding. Consider a classroom with students from various cultural backgrounds. For example, my particular students are involved in a virtual exchange where they focus on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals with students from Iraq. In that exchange, we talk about the goals as it relates to their own communities and countries, and we also discuss things like traditions, languages, customs, and food to build relationships. This fosters understanding while working together to solve a common problem. And that program exchange is called Virtual or Global Solutions, and it is delivered by IREX. Also, representation strengthens that need, right? So imagine a classroom where textbooks predominantly feature stories and examples from one cultural perspective. To address this, we can intentionally select instructional materials that represent a diverse range of backgrounds. For instance, including literature written by authors from different ethnicities or showcasing prominent figures in business or government from various cultures can provide students with a more comprehensive understanding of the world in different discipline studies. Creating classroom norms that promote respect and inclusivity ensures that every student feels safe and supported and represented in the classroom. Stacy will now introduce adaptive teaching methods.
So one adaptive teaching method that I want to discuss is CRT, which is a student-centered strategy that embraces a learning community model for the organization of a classroom. It incorporates in the classroom teaching and school policies and practices the cultural knowledge and assets of historically marginalized students and their communities and families. This approach rests on an equity pedagogy designed to rectify educational conditions that have fallen short of facilitating the learning of many students from racially, culturally, and economically diverse groups. As an educational reform, CRT represents a growing shift away from equating student seat time in a classroom with learning and to evaluating teacher performance on the basis of student engagement and gains in academic learning. And so we have reached the end of our presentation, but we want to leave you with a couple of questions.
Just a second, Stacy.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
We didn't talk about the UDL.
Oh, yes, please.
Learning.
Thank you.
It's okay. So in a political climate that affects laws such as affirmative action in college admissions and the removal of DEI offices in state-funded colleges and universities, there is a growing concern that this may affect teaching curriculum. So in order to avoid losing funding, many instructors, designers are challenged to find ways to meet the needs of our diverse students, providing a broad, culturally respective education to prepare students for the increasing global landscape without crossing those legislative boundaries, right? So we need to consider universal diverse learning styles. Our students not only arrive with a diverse set of learning needs and a range of cultural experience and identities, these culturally based differences can influence how they interact with our courses and materials. We also must consider UDL as a means not only to consider multiple means of representation, but expression and engagement. One thing that I've found works is the utilization of real world experiences as it relates to course concepts. For example, when I cover topics on managing a diverse workforce, I ask students to consider Title VII laws, using examples from our curriculum from the perspective of an HR manager, and consider how they would create a safe workspace for all, irrespective of sex, gender, race, religion, physical ability, etc. These skills that students matriculate include cross-cultural communication, empathy, along with understanding class requirements. And lastly, we can consider active learning strategies, which is an approach which allows all students to actively engage in their learning process. By incorporating active learning strategies, such as cooperative learning, problem-based learning, or project-based learning, we provide opportunities for students to apply their knowledge and skills in real-world contexts. For example, I have a group project in my employee relations course where students undergo a mock collective bargaining process to bargain the terms of their final exam. This allows them to collaborate with their diverse set of peers, communicate cross-culturally, allow their learning to be student-centered, as Stacy mentioned earlier, and take ownership of their process while learning the collective bargaining process. They get a chance to discuss and learn from each other in a way that they may not in a non-student centered approach. So that's it.
Yay. So now we have reached our knowledge checkpoint, and I know we're short of time, but we're going to leave you with these 3 questions so you can take back to your institutes and kind of think about, how do culturally responsive teaching practices aim to enrich the educational experience at your institute? How does emphasizing the intentional creation of inclusive learning environments, curriculum, and supportive services support academic success for all at your institute? And lastly, what are the key learning strategies educators can employ to foster inclusivity and empower all learners to thrive at your institute? So hopefully you can take these questions back to wherever you are representing and continue to make that change to make sure that all learners get an equitable chance of a great experience when it comes to their educational endeavors. If you have any questions about the presentation, if you want more samples or resources, you can reach us at these email addresses here. And at the end we have a list of our resources that you can have access to as well. And that is it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Kenya and
you.
Stacy. It's so hard in 15 minutes. And we all want you to talk more than 15 minutes. So total apologies for the time constraint, but thank you for giving us fantastic information in such a short time. We are fortunate, like I said, that we do have a little bit of an open time. So I am going to go ahead and open it to the group for questions. I've tried to pin our presenters from both the first section and second section of that. I will, while we are opening for questions though, share the code because I know some people want that. Oh, there we go. All right, and it's open for questions.
Hey, Sue.
Yes.
This is if you look up in the chat, there were a couple of different questions from the
Thank
very
you.
first. Yeah, go back up in the chat, and I think there were questions that were dropped in from the first session and the second session.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, unfortunately, with all these windows open, it is overriding a few, so I appreciate that. I believe the first one was the reflection by, was it Amy Darty? Amy, do you want to come off mic and just maybe give your questions real quick?
I have to remember my questions. Okay.
I can read them a little bit if that
No,
would help you.
that's all right.
Okay.
That's do that. I know one of them I was asking. I think it got answered, but
Okay.
I was saying that when my cogent question was that I teach history and I use a lot of charts, and I gave an example of one in which I was using casualty rates as a table about World War I. And right now this is available. However, it's in a static snip because the resource that is provided for was in a printed form, like it's old, right? And that happens in history a lot. So with this PDF conversion, would that work the same way, or do I need to approach that solution in another method?
Math picks definitely can help out with that. I personally did that as well. So I think a couple of weeks ago, I tried to get some data from IKM, and the chart that they provided for me only can do screenshot. So I was not able to capture the whole data. So I just did screenshot of it and then put them in math picks and then exported Excel file. So that worked for me. I think it would work for you as well.
In terms of how the student would receive that information so that I have an understanding of how they'd be able to use it, what would it look like? If I'm the student user getting that converted table, how would it present it to them? I guess I kind of need the other side of it, because I don't need to understand how the student would be able to use or adapt the information. Can you talk about that?
So it depends on how big is the table. Like the table that I was trying to capture is quite big, so I have to just combine all the different screenshots to a big Excel file. So that worked the best for me. If this is a small table for you, you could just create that table, recreate that table in a Canvas page, and then students would be able to see, as long as the table has table header and all the formatting correctly. So, and that would be accessible for students as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Baiwen. We also had a question. I don't know if it's a question or a statement, but maybe we can help you out, Robert. So Robert posted that he teaches music and they too have a special writing language and characters for looking at music. Any suggestions or have you heard anything that might work for him?
I'm so sorry, Robert. I haven't done any research on that.
And I open it up to the group too. We've got a great group of almost 50 people here. Anybody
Actually,
else?
Robert and I had a little separate conversation where I dropped it in there, but
Oh,
I guess
yay.
it's between us, where I have a colleague that teaches 3 different forms of sign language. She teaches Guatemalan, American, and international. And what she has done with music is she uses a 2-step process. I gave him I guess, Robert, you could drop it in the main chat. Basically where she uses a ASL to interpret the music, and then in turn, ASL can then be converted by an accessibility tool to create a usable function. So yes, it's a 2-step process, but that's what she does. And sometimes in her case, she's having to convert between different sign language forms. So that's why she uses that, because Guatemalan Sign Language, for example, she said is very different from American Sign Language, which is then also
Wow.
different from International Sign Language. So she uses it when she's teaching cultural music language. So that's why I think she uses that. Oh, there, he dropped it to everybody.
Yes, thank you, Robert.
Yes, I appreciate it very much. My chief concern is students with visual difficulties, because essentially the first 2 years of any music major are centered around learning notation based on sight. 4 semesters of a class called sight reading. You have to be handed a piece of music on a piece of paper and you turn that into sound. Yes, believe it or not, Braille notation does exist, but you're never going to hand a blind student an edition of a piece of choral music, a three-minute piece of choral music outlining the text and the notes and the rhythms, which are all expressed differently in Braille, would be 500 pages long. So it's our music theory textbook, believe it or not, was issued in Braille, and it's 9 volumes, 9 3-inch binders.
Wow.
So it's not really, it's not very workable, but it's all right. Yeah.
Right.
Robert, wasn't there a development in the last couple of years for a pulse-based Braille? It's basically a tablet, which yes, it's musical notation, but in terms of, tonality of whether it would be high or low or what key it would be in, it isn't necessarily shared the same way. I know that we saw something in UCF has in their student accessibility services, they added a tool that is somehow connected within a tablet. I'm wondering if you might look at that, because I
Sure.
do know that they mentioned that it has a way for them to convert Braille to a digital resource.
That
Not
would
sure how it works, only
Yeah.
that it was mentioned, and they have to do that for students who don't have something tactile. If they're taking an online or mixed mode course, that might be a
That
solution.
would be very interesting. I will admit, haven't had any blind students in years. We had one about 15 years ago, and the issue was not so much, she was a piano major and sang in the choir, gorgeous voice, wonderful ear, could play anything. She really was talented, but it was doing the music theory homework, which is essentially like math problems. They are printed problems that the students must solve according to 18th century music notation rules. And it meant, this is not a complaint in any way, but it meant that even if she could do it, how could she communicate it back to the professor for grades? So it meant actually hiring a person. The college had to hire a person to work with Beth for 20 hours a week. And that person had to have a music degree and know how to read Braille. And, because even if Beth did her homework in Braille, it had to be read by someone who understood Braille musical notation and could turn it back into print so that the professor could grade it. It was, I don't want to sound unsupportive, but it was many, many thousands of dollars to get her through. And I'm glad she did get through. She went on to Florida State, but it was a challenge.
Well, I thank you for your questions. I thank you for posting them in the chat. I thank you for those that reminded me to go look at the chat for our questions. We are at the end of our lightning session time. We do have a 10-minute break coming up, so that is very nice. I again would like to thank all of you for attending. I appreciate our presenters, and I look forward to our 3 o'clock concurrent sessions. I believe we have the Teaching with AI in this room, and it was one of the best in track winners, so that will be exciting. But again, we're just going to have a 10-minute break for now. So thank you all again, and we will see you shortly.